welcome to Naturalistics, a podcast designed to help you become a better naturalist. Through questions, observations, and storytelling, the three components which make up the Naturalistics Triforce. I'm Stefan, here with me is Matt.
What's up?
And today, episode 5, Bird is the Word. We're talking about birds today.
Nice, yeah, I'm super excited for this topic. It's like, some of the best naturalists of all time were awesome naturalists because of their birding expertise. And, and the podcast is going well. We're on episode 5. It's like unreal sometimes. I'm like, oh wow, we've been doing this for like 5 months. And not much to update on yet. We're getting more and more people listening, more and more people giving us good feedback. And actually today we have our first listener question, which is awesome. So Kaya writes from us from Alaska, and she says,
The last frontier.
Is it really, though?
Yeah,
that space was the last frontier.
No, that's the final frontier.
Oh, right.
No, Alaska's tag, like Maine, the way life should be. There's Alaska,
oh,
the
right.
last
like
frontier.
A license plate thing?
Yeah, they're a license plate thing.
Okay, well, anyway, Kaya from Alaska says, I've been seeing chickadees foraging on last year's cattail stalks. Are there insects there that overwinter that they're feeding on?
It's a good question, and it's a good hypothesis, I would say.
Yeah, Kaya's a great naturalist. I actually know Kaya pretty well, and so what I did, I don't know, I didn't know, and what I did was I just looked it up. I Googled it. No shame in that, right?
Not at all.
I mean,
no. It's a tremendous resource.
Oh, yes.
Google and the internet is a tremendous resource. There's no shame in availing yourself of that.
For sure. So I just Googled it, and the exact wording of what I Googled was chickadees feeding on cattails, and I got some cool results. So first results were a bunch of actually pictures of chickadees feeding on cattails. Mm-hmm. Not so helpful, but cool to look at. Because I actually had seen this behavior too, so I knew what she was talking about. I just never actually asked that question.
Yeah. So the pictures at least sort of corroborate that this is not just a one-off kind of observation, but
we can trust
more regular
that
behavior.
It's real. It happens.
Sure.
There's evidence, photographic. So it actually took. I had to scroll down a little bit to find stuff I was looking for, and I could look in the links and see. Okay, that's like photograph websites and stuff like that aren't. It's not going to have what I want. What I want is to know what they're feeding on. And one of the links was a book in Google Books, which is pretty cool that they have these books for free that are like scanned, I guess, into Google. And then what's cool also is that the search engine will apply itself to these books. And so it can go through like a huge, massive textbook and get right to what you're looking for.
Right.
And so those are really awesome when they come up on a Google search. Sometimes they can mean nothing, but in this case, it really hit the money. So it brought us to a book called The Book of Swamp and Bog: Trees, Shrubs, and Wildflowers of Eastern Freshwater Wetlands by John Eastman. And this seems like an awesome book. I think I might have seen it before, but I've never read it or used it. But it brought me right to a paragraph on page, I don't know. Who cares? It's right in the middle of the book, so it's just kind of cool how it brings you right to it, though. And it says, basically, that the chickadees are feeding on something called a cattail moth. Pretty original name. Limonacea fragimitella. Okay, I'm just going to butcher that Latin name.
The frag kind of makes sense, right?
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, so it's this moth, which seems to cocoon in the cattail, and then it's overwintering in the cocoon in the cattail, and then the chickadees are finding it and then plucking it out. Seems like in late winter. I don't know exactly why it's late winter, but it's cool nonetheless. And it looks like then there's another species too, which is the pyralid moth, which also it will also be in the spikes as well. But it seems like the main food source is this cattail moth cocoon. So that's cool. So this Google research just literally within like 5 minutes brought me to this cattail moth. And so what I did was I just Googled the Latin name and checked in on make sure that's like a real creature and like just verify a little bit more about its life history. Because, overall, I would just say that Google is excellent when it's excellent and terrible when it's terrible, because you can find yourself in some weird places on the internet, as probably anyone knows, and you can be led astray pretty easily. And what you need to do, like with any internet research, just be able to verify things from multiple sources. And definitely as a naturalist, like, you want to be doing that. So, like, first of all, knowing that it was an ebook was a plus for me. Like, this is a published manuscript.
Published not just on the internet, but...
And then also being able... knowing that the name of the animal was cattail moth, too, was, like, pretty reassuring for me that I was on the right track.
Yeah.
But then also being able to follow up and do research on that moth helped me, like, be like, I'm sure that is the answer in that.
Yeah.
That's what I was looking for.
And so what you come down to is you're thinking it's one of two species according to this book.
Yeah.
It could be one of two species. And the next step would be go out there, pick apart that cattail, right?
Yeah, definitely.
And see if it's one of those, or maybe it's something else.
Yeah, it totally could be.
The way that the author of this book, or whoever collected the data, knows that this is what this is because they did that.
Yeah, so for sure. Yeah.
That's the only way to be sure.
Yeah, and it's cool because we just wanted to highlight this a little bit because it's an example of using the internet to really get information really quickly and efficiently. As a naturalist, like, that's awesome because I can just really find out something specific about this moth and then do further research. But what we don't want to do is get roped into that world completely where we're doing all of our research and we're asking all of our questions and then answering them on the internet. You're not a naturalist who do that, right?
It's like you're eating baby food for the rest of your life.
What?
Yeah, you're being spoon fed stuff that's already been chewed up and
all right,
processed, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Rather than going out and sinking your teeth into something real.
Yeah, so I think it's important, and we recommend that we definitely recommend using the internet in general, and Googling stuff is totally awesome and great.
Yeah.
But just make sure you verify where it's coming from, what the information is, and then don't let that be the end of it.
Yeah.
Is what Stefan said.
Let it kickstart your Triforce.
Yeah, for sure.
Don't let that be like the conclusion of the Triforce and let it kind of stall out. Yeah. But let it be the thing that just you really, really let it be like the ether that kind of like gets things going. And then take it from there and take it out into the field and make your own observations and maybe make discoveries.
Yeah. Prove them wrong.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, your chickadees might be feeding on something else. Maybe they're feeding on some sort of vegetation or something in there. It's possible.
Totally.
The internet has a lot of great information, but it doesn't have all the answers.
And there's probably other stuff that's similar to cattail that you might find that chickadees are also feeding on, but there's not literature on. Maybe you can find out what that is, or just discover it on your own. Don't Google it.
Yeah.
Don't Google it. Go just
dive
collect
right in there
it
and pick it
and
apart.
try and identify it and consciously do that without using Google. But we just wanted to go over how cool it is to use the internet. We're super grateful for it, and also cautious about how we use it too. So cool.
Right. So now down to the meat.
Yeah, let's get into it. So we're doing bird is the word today.
We're talking about birds.
Which is really what we want to do is go into birding basics.
And we're going to talk about birding basics. And I don't know if this is the right time, Matt, but I just want to make
it's always the right time.
I want to make a distinction because Matt and I are both birders, and we love going out and looking at birds. And there's birding, and that's one thing. But then there's also observing birds, and the two can go together. But birding doesn't always necessarily involve like the thoughtful observation of birds that we're going to be talking about in terms of like what how is a naturalist birding?
You're right. How does the Triforce apply to
a birder? Isn't always a naturalist.
Yeah.
Right. So
I mean, you can come up with a scenario, and I've met people who were on the borderline of this, where they really were just going for rare birds and checking birds off their list. I mean, that's one of the first things that you'll be exposed to if you enter into the birding world is listing and how obsessive that can be.
And nothing against that. Nothing against that at all. Like, it's a great
And you
hobby.
can become a naturalist of birders, because that's pretty cool, too. Because it's fascinating, the listing thing. But it is, I mean, really, at the end of the day, are you doing it, like, going back to the Triforce, what is the curiosity? I mean, I could see some observation, because you're observing some rare, like, vermilion flycatcher in Maine or something like that. And then maybe there's some storytelling on the rare bird, and so maybe they are naturalists, but it feels like a weak Triforce.
It's kind of surface deep.
Yeah, it's just,
especially if you see the vermilion flycatcher, you soak it in, like you kind of like you appreciate this beautiful bird, and then you turn away.
Yeah.
To see the next bird. I think the value and what we're going to focus on, the value for a naturalist in the act of birding, is to observe maybe just one individual bird for an extended period of time or repeatedly.
Yeah, definitely. We really value that. I mean, let's not turn birding birds into Pokemon. Right? That's what this is about.
Right. Yeah, it's not from a naturalist standpoint, and what we're going to be talking about on the show today, we're talking about birds, not necessarily birding.
Gotta catch 'em all.
You don't have to you don't have to catch them all. But if you can observe one and make some really interesting observations, things that spark your curiosity, get you asking good questions, get you making more good observations, and sort of processing all that into a good story.
Yeah,
that's what we're after.
For sure. So we'll get right into it, and we are going to be talking about the basics of bird ID here. So we're going to be sharing with you some of our perspective on what we think is important in terms of how to identify birds and how to get to know the birds, sort of from a beginner level, but what we find is important for that. So there will be more episodes on birds. You can be assured of that.
Certainly.
So we'll start with what Cornell Lab it has said are the 4 keys to identification of birds. And Cornell Lab is probably the premier organization in the world, it seems like to me,
probably definitely North America.
Yeah, definitely North America for cataloging, for like organizing data on birds, for introducing people to birds, and collecting photos and video. There's this whole thing, the Macaulay Library, you should check out. It's pretty sweet. But anyway, they have this thing, their 4 keys to bird ID, and Stefan and I could come up with our own stuff, but we really like to take other people's ideas and make them our own. No, I'm just kidding. No, actually, this just really works really well.
Yeah, so we're just going to stand on the shoulders of some giants here, because that's what they're there for.
That's what they're there for. It means to stand upon. But yeah, no, these are 4 keys that really have helped me out a lot in my birding. And I remember when I was introduced to them, not by Cornell Lab, but just at some point when I was a young birder, and they really are the keys.
They're things that if you can take it in and internalize these sort of 4 points, and then apply that to your observations of birds, it's going to make you a better naturalist.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. It's going to be key. It's like, this is the ABCs of birding. Like, identification is the ABCs of the naturalist.
Right.
And we're talking about the ABCs of birding right here. So, identifying birds. How do we do it?
Today, especially, we're focusing on visual ID.
Yeah, that's definitely a caveat here, is that we didn't, the world of learning bird vocalizations is like a whole nother thing. Maybe we'll touch on it a little bit, but we might have a whole nother episode about how to learn bird vocalization. And then there might be a whole nother episode on this whole thing called bird language. We have many bird topics ahead. But let's get right into it.
Yeah, so bird is the word, not bird is the nerd. That'll be another episode.
Probably. I mean, yeah. Anyway, so size and shape is the first one. So this is critical because there's many birds that look similar but have different sizes. And then shape is really important because it gets you down to groups of birds.
Right.
I really think of shape actually as more important than size. We had a little discussion about this earlier, but
Right.
But for instance, like flycatcher, it has a certain posture in the way it holds itself, where its tail is long, and its back is kind of upright, and its head is looking around, and it just has this distinct look that a warbler doesn't really have, because a warbler's more prostrate and like
Right.
it's looking kind of
Almost
down,
like crouching style.
yeah,
Yeah.
or like a chickadee. So that posture, that shape that it's creating, is really critical. Like that, right off the bat, I can tell you it's a flycatcher. Just by its shape.
Even in a poor light situation, a situation with glare or bad like overcast backlighting, just that posture can narrow the field, like you're saying.
Yeah, I almost
to a
think
group of
posture
birds.
might be a better word than shape in some ways, but I understand what shape is like encompasses posture, because
Right.
when you talk about shape too, for like raptors and stuff, like an accipiter, like a forest hawk shape, when you're looking up at it, is way different than a falcon's, and those are two groups of hawks. Yeah, a buteo, however you want to pronounce that.
I put the emphasis on the middle syllable for that one.
You do what you do, but these shapes, I can understand. Yeah, so shapes, they're going to help you really hone in on these groups of birds. Size is harder because I feel like it's hard to get perspective on things.
Size is relative.
Think about it, especially for seabirding. It's like, okay, like, is that a kittiwake or is that a herring gull? Like, it's like way out there, and you're just like, I have no perspective on that.
It's not without merit, but it's just the usefulness of knowing relative size is less helpful.
Yeah,
and
the more I think about
situations.
it, like, I mean, obviously size is going to help you from really major categories of birds, like songbird versus like a raptor, or like a game bird, like a turkey,
right? Yeah,
versus like a grouse, maybe even, or
yeah.
So it is helpful, but I want to emphasize shape here and posture in that one.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, we got to move on though.
Right.
Color pattern. That's the second one.
It's kind of like the classic. Like you're looking in your field guide, you're looking at birds. Some field guides organize birds by color.
Yep.
You know.
Sorry if you're colorblind, but it is critical to bird ID, especially for things like groups like warblers and stuff like that.
If you want to get more specific than what you can do with posture and shape.
Yeah.
And size.
Yeah, and in color pattern, we're looking really at wings, tail feathers, eye masks. So if there's any coloration around the eye, that seems to be really critical.
Yeah.
To bird ID. But overall, you want to be thinking color pattern. What's the pattern here?
And oftentimes it can be, if you have a good field guide with good illustrations, it can be one distinct feature. Like one color patch in one place on a bird can be the distinguishing feature,
right?
For you to differentiate between one or more species.
Yep. And you might not catch it the first time because you go to the field guide and you're like, oh, it's this or this, but I didn't see if there was a white band on the back of the tail or not. But then now you know when you see a bird like that, oh, look, does it have a white tail band or not? So you can get down to these like dichotomous levels, like it's either this or that. Does it have a banded tail? Does it not? And then you can go one way or the other. So I think of the color pattern as like the dichotomous aspect. So like the shape and stuff is like you're really getting your groups of birds.
Yeah.
But then you can really start to get more narrow. The color pattern is a lot more like narrow. Like you're not using color pattern to differentiate. Is it a gull or like a heron?
Yeah. Yeah.
But once you have your group, and that's why this shape stuff is really important. But that's when color pattern is going to start to come in more.
Yeah, and it is like you're saying. Well, if this, then this.
Exactly.
And
so that's where it gets down to the dichotomous
cut and dry.
Like if you made a key, like a dichotomous key to birding, like it would start with the shapes, and then like the last questions like would be color pattern. Most of the time, I think. If it's not that, then it's one of these two other ones. So the third one is behavior. And this is really, like, all-encompassing in a lot of ways. Like, it's a big category. But behavior can be really critical, like, in telling the difference in flycatchers. Like, if it's bobbing its tail, what is it probably?
Phoebe?
At least to us, it's a phoebe in our eastern United States.
Yeah, and that's just an example of a behavior that's like, that's what they do. Like, they do that.
Yeah,
and
certain birds
so you can kind of pick them out. It's like, oh, it's Phoebe sized, it's Phoebe shaped, and it's bobbing its tail,
Yeah.
like, it's probably a Phoebe.
Okay, is it soaring or is it flapping? Like, that's behavior
Right,
too. Like,
yeah.
there's a lot of, like,
Yeah.
for predators and stuff like that. That kind of stuff. Is it scratch feeding or is it doing something else? I don't know, getting berries or something like that.
Yeah. Is it
behavior.
feeding on the ground? Is it feeding way up? Like,
Yeah, that's behavior.
Those things are really important.
Yeah, stratification. So, and then also within behavior are definitely the vocalizations, which we're not really going to get. We want to cover that in a whole topic because we have a lot to say about that. But that does encompass vocalizations in that group.
Mm-hmm.
Last one, habitat. So habitat, I think of as the most important and the least important at the same time.
Whoa,
it's kind of weird.
My mind is blown.
So, I think of it as most important because when I'm birding, context is really important to me. I'm not that advanced of a birder where I can just know all the birds at all times. So, like, I have to be sort of, like, triggered to know, like, to listen for certain things in certain places.
And Matt speaks for both of us on this one.
I'm kind of simple in that way. So, like, for instance, like, when I'm in, like, the eastern hardwood forest, there's certain warblers that I can, like, know and expect. There's certain birds that I can know and expect. And then, like, they're more familiar because I'm in the habitat, that context. But then when I go up to higher elevation, or I'm out at sea, right? Like, there's, like, if I'm coastal birding, like, it's like, oh, it's a herring gull, blackback gull. Like, that's pretty, like, normal in that habitat. So, it's a good way for me to just, like, narrow a bunch of birds down really quickly because I only know, these are the only birds that live here. But the thing is, the reason why it's the worst one,
right?
The least important is because that can throw you off when things are not where they're supposed to be. So you can start to put things in boxes, be like, well, they don't live here or whatever.
It
like,
couldn't be that.
They definitely wouldn't be here. Like,
but I can tell you what, they will. They do. And it happens all the time. That's one of the things that birders go nuts about is like the bird that is totally out of place. A common bird from the other side of the world shows up somewhere.
I think they just had the first red-winged blackbird in the UK.
Really?
The first or second recorded, and it's like totally common bird here.
Right.
But like there, it's like blowing all the UK birders' minds right now.
Yes.
It's all over the place. So
I think back to the surf bird. It's the same kind of thing.
Surf bird was weird.
Surf bird pops up. It's like if you were down there and you just said, it's got to be one of these things that I know to be here. Yeah, you would never have come up with surf bird.
And this almost transcends habitat because we're talking about geography at this point. But in terms of habitat too, like it is important to have context, to understand the context of like, okay, I am in a shrubby area, and therefore catbirds are going to be more common. And then if I'm in like dense forest, like I might hear, if I'm lucky, like an eastern wood pewee or something like that. Whereas in a field, like this is a good example. So if I'm in a forest and I hear like a kind of like a flycatcher call, then I can know. I can kind of be like, it's probably a wood pewee if I'm in dense like hardwood forest. And then if I'm in a field and I hear the same thing, then I'm probably thinking of Phoebe. But it doesn't mean that it's not one or the other. Yeah. So, I don't know if that makes sense. But
it does. It's what you're saying is it can help you to kind of get like the usual suspects in your mind. But what you don't want to do is assume that the guilty party is in among the usual suspects.
Yeah, exactly. You don't want to just like rule things out officially like forever with just habitat. And with any of these things, you don't want to use any, we call it single factor reasoning with any of these things. And the other thing about habitat too, like if you have a bird that you see and you're not quite sure what it is, and you're between one bird and another bird when you get to the field guide, and then you look at the habitat, and it's like one is like right on the money for the habitat, and then one is like a little sketchy. You maybe can't say for certain that you saw one or the other, but you probably did see, like, probability says you saw the one that's commonly in the habitat.
Which can be helpful for you. It's not helpful for your list, but it can be helpful for you in your observations and in your journey as a naturalist.
Yeah, no, I think that's totally legitimate. So, those are the 4 keys to birding: size and shape, color pattern, behavior, and habitat. And those are really, if you use those 4, it's really going to bring you a long way in terms of identification of these birds.
I want to say one more thing about habitat, Matt. It's kind of sort of not really necessarily related to ID, but another great thing about learning habitats is if you are looking for a particular species, knowing its habitat is a great way. It seems sort of simple and self-explanatory, but it's great. It's great to familiarize yourself with the habitat of the bird that you want to see.
Yeah.
So that you can go and make some good observations of that bird.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think the more familiar, the better, and the more context that you have, the better. I think. Cool. So we just want to wrap up with a couple points, which is first that we really love our Sibley's guides here.
Right. We're North American. And so that's sort of like our perspective on things, and Sibley's is a great field guide for birds.
And if you're not from North America or Eastern North America, just Google it. Check it out. Just check out the illustrations and the drawings, and you'll see what we mean. It's just so crisp and clear, and and the thing about it is that it's really comprehensive, and it covers every species, and it covers males and females and juveniles, and it just has a nice, clear drawing for each one. And I think Stefan's with me on that. Drawings almost always universally beat a photo in terms of a field guide.
I'd go one step further and just say always. Nix the almost.
I could picture a field guide that had some really bad drawings.
Okay, but fair enough. But the problem with photos is that the light.
Yeah, it's one aspect of
so
one bird at one time.
Yeah, the light, the angle, the position of the bird. You would need, for each species, you'd need 24 photos at least to give you the amount of information that you can get from one drawing.
Yeah, and what Sibley's done is he's taken all the average viewpoint of all these birds and just averaged them into the most generic way that you see the bird in its posture and its color pattern and the lighting and everything. And so it's not always going to match it exactly, but it's just so close to the perfect. If you had one drawing to represent a male cardinal, it's in Sibley's.
Right. Yeah. So it's interesting because it doesn't actually matter that the drawing doesn't look like a live, real cardinal.
Yeah.
It's that the drawing is the most helpful way to help you ID a bird in the field.
Yeah, definitely. And we just really recommend if you don't live in a place where Sibley's applies, that you look for a book that follows that kind of general criteria. We actually want to do a podcast episode on covering our favorite field guides and why they're our favorite field guides. Because we think it might be helpful for people to figure out what field guides are the most valuable. So we might get that at some point. But
range maps will be discussed.
Range maps will be discussed adamantly. All right. So the second thing we just wanted to close out with, which is binoculars.
Crucial tool, not just for birding or for observing birds as a naturalist.
Yeah.
But just as a naturalist, this is probably one of your most essential tools.
I'd say it's probably number one next to a journal or something like that.
Okay. Yeah.
I mean, if you assume that everybody has a journal, that's the number one.
So maybe your first big investment, if you don't have a set of binoculars.
It's a solid investment, and someday I'll be able to afford a spotting scope. But for right now, I'd still take a pair of binoculars over a spotting scope.
Right, if you have nothing else.
But we really recommend one particular brand, and maybe someday they'll sponsor us. Hey, sponsor us. We really recommend this brand called Eagle Optics. They're in Michigan. They're amazing. They have.
I think it's Wisconsin.
Oh yeah, you're right. Sorry, my bad.
Midwestern.
Okay, so they're in Wisconsin. Amazing customer service, high quality binoculars. I mean, they're expensive, but remember, these are optics, $300, $400 for a pair, which is a lot of money. So not trying to
it's
like
an
write
investment.
that off.
You really have to think of it as an investment.
But they have a lifetime warranty, and I've sent mine back like 5 times, and I get it like a brand new pair of binoculars because they fix them up and like clean them out, and it's just like it's getting like a new pair of binoculars like once a year, once every 2 years, and
depending on how
I just really can't talk them up enough. And so it's to the point where we are actually like we need to talk about how awesome they are.
Yeah.
And
especially with the mindset of naturalists on a budget, the quality of the optics for the cost is a really good value.
Oh yeah, there's spreadsheets.
Maybe the best value out there, and if you have unlimited resources, maybe this doesn't apply to you. But we're thinking of naturalists on a budget. And like Matt said, we cannot say enough good things about Eagle Optics. They're great service. Matt can attest to. Oh, yeah. I have 2 pairs of Eagle binoculars. Matt has a pair that he sent back repeatedly. So the warranty is for the lifetime, not of you, the owner, but of the product itself. So it's like as long as you can send back the broken pieces, they'll replace it or repair it.
Yeah, nice. And they take really good photos. At least through them. I've used my iPhone to take a picture through Eagle Optics. And I just got a really nice one, actually, of a great gray owl. Which is kind of sweet. I mean, okay, it's not a really nice photo. It's like an evidence photo.
Yeah, it shows.
But it's pretty sweet, and it's cool.
And
maybe we'll give like a YouTube tutorial someday on that or something.
That is, again, the naturalist on a budget. I think this is the poor man's zoom lens.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
But we've both done that, and it has been useful for IDing a bird. Remember the...
Remember the great cormorant, right?
We saw a great cormorant, and we took a picture with a phone through a spotting scope, I think it was. But it was like...
That's right.
That got us the evidence that we could then later confirm.
Yeah, no, it's not bad.
That it was sort of an unusual bird for us.
I'm into it.
And then another great little thing that I think... Yeah, binoculars are just so useful. But there's one use that was shown to me by a friend of ours, Dan Hanchy, and
nice.
I'm not saying that he invented this method, but I think of him whenever I do it, and
it's the Dan Hanchy method.
I think of it as the Dan Hanchy special, and what you do is you take your binocular, you flip it around, and you're going to look through the objective lens, and you can zoom right in on small stuff. And it works as like a magnifying glass.
Oh, nice.
You can get right up close.
You don't need a hand lens.
You can look at snow fleas, and you can pick out their limbs, and like...
It's kind of like a fisheye lens a little bit, but it's so good.
It's great. You can look really close at small wildflowers. There's so many cool things you can...
Before.
Yeah. So anyway, binoculars, many uses, probably many that we don't know about.
Yeah, nice. All right, well, that wraps us up. I hope that was helpful for you, even if you're a long-time birder or just starting up or interested in starting. So thanks for listening, everybody. Get out there, see some birds for your own enjoyment, but also for naturalist reasons.